They say betrayal hits different when you find it in your own bed. The kind of truth that rewrites everything you thought was real. My name is Brent Davison, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a contractor who built our house with my own hands, crafting each beam and joint while my wife Heidi planned our future. My days were long, working extra hours to give us the life she said she wanted. Then came that Tuesday afternoon. The sound of familiar laughter upstairs, Heidi's mixed with a man's. My toolbox hit the floor as I pushed open our bedroom door. There they were, my wife Heidi and her ex-boyfriend Vaughn, tangled in sheets I'd bought last spring. The silence in that moment wasn't empty. It roared in my ears like a warning I should have heard years ago. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I'd finished up the Palmer job early that Tuesday. Good timing on the crown molding meant I could head home and maybe surprise Heidi with takeout from that Thai place she loved. The late October sun was already dipping behind the maples I'd planted 3 summers back, casting long shadows across our driveway as I pulled in. The house looked quiet from outside. Normal. Funny how normal can shatter in seconds, isn't it? I grabbed my toolbox from the truck bed, its familiar weight a comfort in my calloused hands. That box had built our life. Deck, kitchen remodel, master bath. Every upgrade Heidi wanted I'd made happen with these tools. The front door clicked shut behind me. That's when I heard it. A man's laugh floating down from upstairs. Deep, confident. Then Heidi's laugh joined in, that breathy giggle she used when she was flirting. My stomach turned to concrete. Each step up those stairs felt like climbing a mountain. The toolbox got heavier with every inch. My boots, usually solid on the treads I'd installed myself, seemed to wade through quicksand. The laughter got clearer, closer, more intimate. You know that moment when you're about to open a door, and you already know what's waiting on the other side will change everything? That's where I was, hand on the brass knob of our bedroom door. Our bedroom, the one where I'd hung wallpaper she picked out, where we'd talked about having kids someday. I pushed the door open. There they were, my wife Heidi and a man I recognized as Vaughn, her ex from before we met, tangled in our sheets, scrambling like teenagers caught by parents. Vaughn's shirt was off, Heidi's blouse unbuttoned. The air reeked of his cologne. "You weren't supposed to be home," Heidi blurted like that made it better. Like my real crime was ruining her afternoon plans. Vaughn sprawled back against our headboard, trying to look casual while pulling the sheet higher. He had the nerve to smirk. "Come on, man. Be a man about this. These things happen." My fingers tightened on the toolbox handle until my knuckles went white, but I kept my voice steady. These things happen to men who don't keep their promises. I kept mine. "Oh, here we go," Heidi snapped, finding her anger like a shield. St. Brent working his fingers to the bone. "You're never here, what did you expect?" "I expected my wife to honor her vows," I said, each word precise as a hammer strike. "I worked those hours because you wanted the granite counters, the custom cabinets, the master suite. I built everything you asked for. It's not about the house." She was screaming now. It's about lies," I cut in. Every kiss was a lie. Every "I love you" was a lie. Every time you said you were proud of what we built together, lie. Vaughn shifted, that smirk still playing on his face. "Listen, buddy. I'm not your buddy." My voice could have frozen hell. "And you don't get to speak in my house." Heidi started up again, something about how I was being dramatic, how I didn't understand. But I was already turning, walking down those stairs I'd built with my own hands. Her voice followed me, shrill with panic now. "Brent, don't you dare walk away from me, Brent." The night air hit my face as I stepped outside. My toolbox was still in my hand, heavy with everything I'd used to build this life. I set it down carefully on the porch and whispered to myself, "No wild swings. When I strike back, it'll be precise." I drove through town in a daze, muscle memory guiding the truck while my mind kept replaying that scene upstairs. The steering wheel collected sweat from my palms at every turn. Matt's house appeared ahead, a simple ranch-style place he'd bought last spring. The porch light clicked on as I pulled in, Matt's silhouette appearing in the doorway. "Brent, what's going on?" His eyes tracked from my face to the toolbox I was still carrying. "You look like hell, man. I need a place to crash tonight." The words came out wooden, rehearsed. "Things with Heidi. It's bad." Matt's expression darkened. He'd always been protective of both of us, treating me like the brother he wished he'd had instead of a sister. "Come in. Beer's in the fridge." I followed him inside, setting my toolbox by the door with careful precision. The familiar scent of sawdust and coffee hit me. Matt had picked up my habit of woodworking on weekends. "Thanks. I don't want to get into everything right now, but..." "Hey." Matt squeezed my shoulder. "Couch is yours. We'll talk when you're ready." The ceiling above Matt's couch became my companion that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smirk on Vaughn's face, heard Heidi's words echo. "You weren't supposed to be home." Like my real crime was bad timing. "My hours," she'd said. "The ones I worked to give her everything she wanted." Each accusation twisted like a knife, but instead of bleeding out, I felt something harden inside me. Morning crept in through Matt's blinds. I waited until 8:30 when I knew Heidi would be at work, before heading back to the house. The drive felt different in daylight, less raw, more tactical. Our front door opened to silence. The house had that hollow feeling, like it knew its foundations weren't just physical anymore. I climbed the stairs, noting how my boots still fit perfectly on the treads I'd measured twice before installing. The bedroom door stood open this time. The bed was stripped bare. The sheets were gone, probably burning in some laundromat across town. The wallpaper Heidi had chosen, pale blue with silver threading, seemed to mock me now. I grabbed what I needed: clothes, toiletries, my laptop. Heading downstairs, something caught my eye on the kitchen counter. The phone bill, still in its envelope. My contractor's mind kicked in. Measure twice, cut once. Trust, but verify. I opened it, scanning the itemized calls. There it was. A number, repeated dozens of times over the past 3 months. Always during my work hours, always for 20, 30 minutes at a time. I grabbed a pen from my toolbox and copied it down, along with the dates and times. Evidence like marking lumber before making the cut. My phone felt heavy as I punched in those digits. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, cocky like he owned the world. "Vaughn, this is Brent. We need to talk, man to man, Sunday at my place." The next morning I sat at Matt's kitchen table with my laptop, contractor's mindset in full gear. Every job needs a plan, and this one would be my most precise yet. I logged into our shared iCloud account. Heidi never was great with technology, hadn't bothered changing passwords. The evidence spilled out like water from a broken pipe. Hotel charges jumped off the screen. Always mid-afternoon, always the same place near Vaughn's failed gym. Each receipt matched a day when Heidi claimed to be at her mother's book club or running errands. I printed them, my printer humming like a saw through fresh lumber. The rideshare receipts came next. Pickup points, drop-offs, a steady pattern leading to that same hotel. I highlighted the dates in yellow, marking them against our family calendar. Easter Sunday, when she'd said she had a migraine. My birthday dinner, canceled last minute because her friend needed support. Each lie stood out now, clear as marked measurements on a beam. Then came the texts. My throat tightened as I scrolled through their messages. Same room, same song, same us. The words burned into my retinas. I printed those too, watching each page emerge like evidence photos at a crime scene. I drove to Office Depot, picked up a pack of colored folders. Back at Matt's, I sorted everything by type: financial in red, messages in blue, timeline in green. The precision felt good, like squaring up corners on a perfect miter joint. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed Gerald and Diane's number. Their landline, they still kept one, rang twice before Diane answered. "Hello? Diane, it's Brent. Listen, I need you and Gerald to come to dinner Sunday evening. There's something serious we need to discuss as a family." A pause. "Brent, is everything all right?" "Not really, but it will be after Sunday. Please just come. It's important." "Of course, dear. We'll be there." Matt was next. His phone went straight to voicemail. He was probably on a job site. "Hey, brother. Sunday night at the house. I need you there. Can't explain now, but it matters." He texted back within minutes. I'm there. Need anything else? Just you. Thanks. Heidi was last. My fingers hovered over her contact info before pressing dial. She answered on the first ring. Brent, are you coming home? Sunday evening. We need to talk. Get closure. Oh, thank God. Relief flooded her voice. Yes, of course, I'll be there. We can work through this, Brent. I know we can. Right. Sunday at 6. I hung up before she could say more. Back at Matt's table, I stared at the folders laid out like blueprint pages. Each tab labeled, each document highlighted, every lie documented. My hands, calloused from years of honest work, traced the edges of the evidence that would tear down the facade she'd built. Closure, I whispered, closing the folders and stacking them precisely. But not the kind you're expecting. Sunday evening settled over the house like a heavy blanket. I'd spent the afternoon cleaning, though the place was already spotless. Old habit from my contractor days. Always leave a job site better than you found it. The dining room table gleamed under fresh polish, 6 places set with the good plates we usually saved for Christmas. The roast filled the kitchen with rich scents of garlic and rosemary. Diane's recipe, she'd taught me years ago during one of those long Sunday afternoons when I was still that nice boy Heidi had married. The memory tasted bitter now, like coffee gone cold. I adjusted the folders at my place setting for the 10th time, straightening their edges until they lined up perfectly with the table runner. Everything had to be precise. Through the window, shadows stretched across our front lawn, the lawn I'd graded myself, seeded with Kentucky blue that took 3 seasons to really take hold. The doorbell chimed at 6 sharp. I drew in a slow breath, steadying myself like I did before walking roof trusses. Heidi stood on our porch, silk blouse catching the evening light, makeup perfect as a magazine cover. Her smile wobbled when she saw my expression, or lack of one. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Professional courtesy, like greeting a client. She glided past me to the dining room, confidence painted on thick as her lipstick. It smells amazing, she offered, settling into her usual chair. Just like Mom's. The doorbell cut her off. Something flickered across her face. Confusion, then the first hint of worry. I opened the door to Gerald, Diane, and Matt clustered on the porch. Their smiles faded as they spotted Heidi through the doorway. What's going on? Gerald asked quietly. Please come in, I said, ushering them forward. Everything will make sense soon. Heidi half rose from her chair, mouth opening and closing like a fish on deck. Matt's jaw tightened as he passed her. Diane reached for Gerald's hand, gripping it hard enough to whiten her knuckles. The doorbell rang one final time. I knew who stood on the other side before I even touched the handle. Vaughn's smirk melted the instant he saw past me to the family tableau. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Man, I thought, he started. I know what you thought, I cut him off. Inside. He shouldered past me, trying to salvage some swagger, but his steps faltered when Gerald's eyes locked onto him. Recognition dawned on every face around the table. Diane's hand flew to her throat. Matt's chair scraped back an inch. I closed the front door with a quiet click that somehow echoed louder than a slam. Walking to my place at the head of the table, I rested my hands on the stack of folders. Red, blue, and green tabs perfectly aligned. Everyone sit, I said, my voice carrying the same steady tone I used explaining blueprint details to clients. We're doing this once. The silence stretched thin as I opened the red folder first. Hotel receipts spilled across the polished wood like fallen leaves. Gerald leaned forward, silver-rimmed glasses catching the light as he adjusted them. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he lifted the first page. These dates, he muttered, voice trailing off as color drained from his face. I spread out the blue folder next, texts and call logs, each damning exchange highlighted in yellow. Diane's hand flew to her mouth, a small gasp escaping between her fingers. Her pearl earrings caught the overhead light as she shook her head in tiny, desperate movements. Matt's knuckles whitened as he clenched his fists, reading message after message. You told us you were at work conferences, he growled at Heidi. Same room, same song. His voice cracked with disgust as he quoted one of her texts. This is abusive. Heidi's voice shot up an octave, her chair scraping back. You're manipulating everyone, Brent. Turning my whole family against me with context-free snippets. No, I matched her volume, letting the anger I'd been banking finally spark. This is honest. For the first time in months, everyone in this room is seeing the truth. You cheated, you lied. Not just to me, to all of us. Vaughn shifted in his seat, Adam's apple bobbing as he glanced between Heidi and the door. Heidi, he muttered. He has everything. The texts, the charges. Shut up, Heidi snapped, whirling on him. Just shut up. You will not speak to him that way. Gerald's voice cracked like thunder, making everyone jump. I'd never heard that tone from him before. You will sit down, Heidi Marie, and you will face what you've done. You have disgraced yourself and this family. Diane's whisper cut through the tension like a knife. I don't even recognize you anymore. Matt's palm crashed against the table, rattling the water glasses. With him? He jabbed a finger toward Vaughn. After everything? The gambling debts Dad had to cover? The training center scam? Heidi tried to stand again, but Gerald's arm shot out, blocking her path. Sit down. Each word fell like a stone. My hands were steady as I reached for the last envelope. Manila, legal-sized, heavy with finality. The paper whispered across the table runner as I slid it toward her. Heidi Davison, I said, my voice clear and controlled. You've been served. The room went still as a tomb. Only the gentle tick of the grandfather clock marked the seconds, each one falling like a drop of water into stone. Everyone stared at the envelope. Gerald's shoulders slumped, Diane dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Matt's jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Vaughn seemed to shrink in his chair, that trademark smirk long gone. Heidi's perfectly manicured fingers hovered over the envelope, trembling slightly. She didn't touch it. She didn't have to. We all knew what was inside. Divorce papers, already filed with the court, waiting only for her signature. Heidi's face drained of color as she stared at the manila envelope, her fingers still hovering but not touching, like it might burn her. The grandfather clock's steady tick filled the silence, each second stretching out like taffy. You've been served, I repeated, my voice carrying the weight of every sleepless night, every discovered lie. No alimony. I keep the house and all the tools I paid for. You leave with what you brought into this marriage. The words hung in the air like smoke. I remembered the day I'd bought this dining room table, solid oak that I'd refinished myself. Funny how some memories stick with you even when others crumble. Stop this. Heidi's voice cracked as she finally found it. She shot to her feet, the chair wobbling behind her. You're humiliating me on purpose. This isn't fair. You did this yourself, I replied, ice coating each word. Every hotel receipt, every text, every lie to your family about where you were. That was all you. Vaughn shifted in his chair, collar darkening with sweat. Look, I didn't sign up for some kind of family intervention. That's the first true thing you've said all night, I cut him off, not even bothering to look his way. Probably the only true thing you've said since you walked back into her life. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Diane's hands trembled as she folded her napkin over and over. Matt's jaw worked silently, like he was chewing on all the words he wanted to say but couldn't. This is ridiculous. Heidi's voice rose higher, bordering on hysteria. You're all sitting here judging me? After everything I've put up with? The long hours, the constant construction projects, never having time for, sit down! Gerald's command cracked through her accusations like a whip. You will not stand in this house that Brent built with his own hands and throw his work ethic in his face. The pot roast sat untouched in the center of the table, steam no longer rising from it. Diane's favorite. What a waste. But then again, this dinner was never really about the food. Vaughn's chair scraped against the hardwood as he shoved back from the table. Without a word, he stormed toward the front door. The slam echoed through the house like a gunshot. I stood slowly, deliberately, my hands planted on the table. The marriage is over, I announced, looking each person in the eye. I wanted you all here because the truth matters, because family matters, and because lies don't get to win. Brent! Heidi shrieked my name like she could erase everything with volume alone. Brent, you can't do this. But I already had. The papers were filed. The evidence was clear. And judging by the faces around the table, Gerald's grim nod, Diane's quiet tears, Matt's clenched jaw, the jury had reached their verdict. Some might call it cruel, exposing everything this way. But there's a difference between cruelty and consequences. I'd learned that difference standing in my own bedroom doorway, watching my marriage die in real time. I woke to knocking, harsh and official, against Matt's front door. Morning sun filtered through unfamiliar curtains as I pushed myself up from the couch, my back protesting from another night on cushions not meant for sleeping. The deputy stood ramrod straight, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Davison?" When I nodded, he continued, "You've been served with an emergency stay-away order. You're to remain at least 500 feet from your residence for the next 72 hours pending review." My hands trembled slightly as I took the papers, scanning the allegations. Heidi claimed I'd shoved her during dinner, that she feared for her safety. The fury rose in my chest like bile, but I forced it down, kept my voice steady. "Thank you, officer." Matt appeared in the hallway as I closed the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" "Heidi filed a false claim." I held up the papers, jaw clenched. "Says I pushed her last night. You were there. You know that's bull. That lying—" Matt's face darkened. "We'll all back you up, Brent. Every single one of us saw what really happened." I was already pulling out my phone, scrolling for Grace Harlow's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and alert despite the early hour. I explained everything: the dinner, the evidence folder, and now this counterattack. "Listen carefully," Grace said. "Get me 3 things immediately: the doorbell camera footage from last night, written statements from everyone present, and any text messages from Heidi since the dinner. Do not contact her directly. On it." I grabbed my keys, determination replacing the initial shock. "Matt, I need you to write down exactly what you saw last night." The next few hours blurred together. Gerald's voice cracked when I called, heavy with shame. "We'll write our statements right now." I never thought my own daughter. Diane was already crying when she got on the line. "We saw everything, Brent. You never laid a hand on her. How could she do this?" Back at Matt's, I logged into the home security app on my tablet. The doorbell footage played out in crisp detail. Me holding the door as Vaughn shoulder-checked past me, timestamps clear in the corner. Later clips showed Heidi storming out untouched, screaming accusations while I stood rooted by the table. Grace called back that afternoon. "I've reviewed everything you sent. The footage alone destroys her claim, but the witness statements seal it." She paused, her tone hardening. "This isn't over. It's just beginning." I stared at the pile of documents spread across Matt's coffee table. The truth laid out in pixels and ink, ready to defend against more lies. The anger still burned, but slower now, more focused, like a pilot light waiting to fuel whatever came next. The courthouse loomed ahead, all marble and authority. I adjusted my tie, grateful for the weight of the evidence folder in my hand. Grace Harlow walked beside me, her heels clicking against the polished floor with precision that matched her reputation. "Remember," she murmured as we approached the courtroom. "Let me do the talking. Your evidence speaks for itself." I nodded, throat tight. Through the heavy doors I spotted Heidi immediately, perched at the opposing table in a conservative blazer that screamed, "Victim." Her lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, leafed through papers with theatrical focus. When Heidi caught my eye, she lifted her chin, but I noticed the tremor in her hands. Gerald, Diane, and Matt sat in the first row behind me. The space between our families felt wider than the actual aisle. I remembered Sunday dinners when we'd all crowded around one table, passing dishes and sharing laughs. Now we were here, choosing sides. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Marshall entered, her expression already suggesting she'd read our filed responses, and wasn't pleased with Heidi's emergency petition. Grace stood first. "Your Honor, we have video evidence directly contradicting Mrs. Davison's claims of physical assault." She gestured to the courtroom tech who queued up the footage. The doorbell camera's view filled the wall screen. There I was, holding the door as Vaughn shouldered past me. My hands never left the doorknob. Later clips showed Heidi's dramatic exit, me standing well back from the table, her storming out untouched while hurling accusations. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Davison, this footage appears to contradict your sworn statement. Heidi's lawyer rose. Your Honor, the angle shows exactly what happened. Grace interrupted smoothly. We have 3 witnesses prepared to testify. Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Faulkner, would you please step forward? Diane dabbed her eyes as she took the stand first. Her voice wavered but held firm as she described the dinner, specifically noting that I maintained my distance throughout the confrontation. Gerald followed, his testimony matching perfectly. And you're the respondent's in-laws? The judge confirmed. Yes, Your Honor. Gerald's voice carried the weight of his disappointment. We're Heidi's parents, and we're here because the truth matters. Matt's testimony came last, sharp with suppressed anger. Brent never moved toward her, never touched her. Heidi's the one who... That's not true, Heidi burst out, half rising. Judge Marshall's gavel cracked once. Mrs. Davison, you will remain silent or be held in contempt. The rest happened quickly. The judge lifted the stay-away order, citing clear video evidence contradicting the petitioner's claims. She ordered the false report stricken from the record and warned Heidi about penalties for perjury. I felt something loosen in my chest, the first knot of many coming undone. As we gathered our things, Grace touched my arm lightly. Now we go after the assets, she whispered. Looking across the aisle at Heidi's thunderous expression, I realized this victory wasn't just about coming home. It was about finally seeing her clearly, without love's blinders or anger's haze. Just truth in cold courtroom light. Grace didn't waste time. The morning after the hearing, she started filing motions like she was dealing poker hands. Every receipt, every bank statement, she told me, spreading folders across her desk. We're going to paint this picture in high definition. I'd already started digging through our accounts. The joint checking we'd opened right after the wedding told its own story. Hotel charges that lined up perfectly with girls' nights and work conferences that never existed. Grace highlighted each one in sharp yellow. Look at this, she said, tapping her pen against a string of transactions. The Westbrook Hotel 4 times in 3 months. Premium suite rates. She glanced up at me. That's not coffee money. I swallowed hard, remembering how I'd worked overtime those weeks to cover what I thought were home improvement costs. I've got something else. I pulled out my contractor's logbook, packed with material receipts and before and after photos of every renovation I'd done on our house. Every nail, every board, every hour of labor, it's all documented. Grace's eyes lit up as she flipped through the pages. This is exactly what we need. You literally built that home from the ground up. Gerald came through too, God bless him. His written statement landed like a hammer. I witnessed Brent Davison spend countless weekends improving the property, often declining social invitations to complete projects. His dedication to creating a stable home for my daughter makes her betrayal all the more tragic. Between job sites, I organized everything chronologically. Bank records, text messages, photos. Some nights I'd catch myself staring at old pictures, wondering how I'd missed the signs. But then another nasty text from Heidi would light up my phone, and I'd remember exactly why I was doing this. I can't believe you're being so cruel, she wrote one night. 10 minutes later, please, we can work this out. Then, you'll regret this, I promise. I forwarded each one to Grace without responding. She added them to what she called our pattern of behavior file. The pre-trial conference should have been routine, just scheduling and procedure. But Vaughn showed up, lounging against the back wall like he was at a bar. When the judge reviewed our evidence list, he actually snickered. The bailiff, a solid guy with steel gray hair, turned slowly. Sir, maintain decorum or step outside. Vaughn tried his usual smirk. Hey, I'm just here to support. Now, sir. The smirk died. Vaughn pushed off the wall and stalked out, letting the door slam. Heidi's lawyer winced. Even Heidi looked away, her cheeks flushing. Judge Marshall barely glanced up from her calendar. Given the extensive documentation and contested assets, I'm setting final judgment for 3 weeks from today, 9 a.m. sharp. She fixed each of us with a stern look. I expect all parties to arrive prepared and professional. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor, Grace answered smoothly. Heidi's, yes, Your Honor, came out more like a whisper. Walking out, Grace squeezed my shoulder. 3 weeks. That's all we need. The courthouse marble felt cold under my feet that morning. Grace walked beside me, her heels clicking with purpose, both of us carrying folders thick with truth. I'd polished my work boots and worn my best suit, not for Heidi, but for respect of the court. Heidi sat at the opposite table, shoulders rigid in a navy dress I didn't recognize. Her lawyer shuffled papers without meeting anyone's eyes. The empty chair beside her spoke volumes. Vaughn was nowhere to be seen. I remembered the smirk he'd worn at the pretrial, now replaced by his absence when it mattered most. Judge Marshall entered, and we rose. Her black robe whispered against the bench as she settled in, reviewing the stack of documents before her. We're here for final judgment in Davison versus Davison. Ms. Harlow, please proceed. Grace stood, every movement precise. Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of financial misconduct and marital abandonment by Mrs. Davison. She lifted our color-coded folder. Bank records demonstrate systematic misuse of marital funds for hotel stays with her paramour, totaling over $12,000 in the past year alone. I watched Heidi's face tighten as Grace continued. Furthermore, Mr. Davison has provided extensive documentation of his sole contribution to the marital home's value through his contracting work. Every renovation, every improvement was funded and completed by him personally. Heidi's lawyer rose, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, my client maintains that some of these expenses were legitimate business meetings. Really? Grace interrupted smoothly, producing a sheet of texts. These messages between Mrs. Davison and her paramour reference their special room at the Westbrook. Unless business meetings now include champagne service and late checkouts? The judge's pen scratched against her notepad. Heidi's lawyer tried again. Mrs. Davison was in an emotionally vulnerable state, which doesn't explain the systematic deception, Grace countered. The evidence shows calculated misconduct, not momentary weakness. I glanced at Gerald in the gallery. He sat straight-backed, eyes forward, but his jaw worked silently. Diane wasn't there. She'd said she couldn't bear to watch. Judge Marshall set down her pen. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I'm prepared to rule. She looked directly at Heidi. Mrs. Davison, your conduct shows a clear pattern of financial misconduct and marital abandonment. This will be noted in the record. Heidi's breath hitched. The judge continued. The court awards the marital home and all business equipment to Mr. Davison, along with 70% of savings and investments. Mrs. Davison will retain her vehicle and personal effects. No alimony is warranted given the circumstances. Your Honor, Heidi's voice cracked, please. Mrs. Davison, the judge cut in firmly. The evidence speaks for itself. She turned to me. Mr. Davison, do you see any possibility of reconciliation? I stood, my voice steady. No, Your Honor. The marriage is irreparably broken. Heidi burst into tears, the sound sharp in the quiet courtroom. I didn't look at her. Gerald turned away, his shame visible in the slump of his shoulders. The gavel struck once, clean and final. Judgment entered. We're adjourned. Scout's nails clicked against the hardwood as he followed me through our quiet house. Morning light streamed through windows I'd cleaned myself, catching dust motes in golden beams. The maple banister I'd left unfinished that night waited, patient as old wood can be. I ran my palm along its surface, remembering how I'd dropped my tools when I heard those laughs upstairs. Now the memory felt distant, like someone else's bad dream. I pulled out my sanders and stains. Scout settling nearby to watch. The steady rhythm of working wood always cleared my head. Strip by strip, I erased the rough patches, letting fresh grain emerge under my hands. The banister began to glow, telling its own story of survival. Some scars you sand away, others you polish until they become part of the beauty. My phone buzzed. Gerald's number. These calls came every few weeks now, careful conversations that never directly mentioned Heidi's choices. He cleared his throat. The house looks good from outside. Those new shutters really set it off. Thanks. Finally got around to hanging them properly. A pause stretched between us. She's working at Crystal's salon now. Front desk. His voice carried the weight of disappointed hopes. Part-time hours. Tried getting her own place but couldn't swing the rent. She's back home with us. I focused on the wood grain beneath my fingers. How's Diane holding up? Managing. Family dinners are. He sighed. Heidi just stares at her plate, can't look us in the eye anymore. Vaughn's not in the picture, thank God. His gym venture went under. Word is he's couch surfing, dodging landlords. Karma's got a long memory, I guess. Guess so. I didn't need or want the details of their downfall. My peace wasn't built on their ruins. It was built on this house, these quiet mornings with Scout, the honest work of my hands. The banister gleamed now, smooth as river stone. I wiped it down one last time while Gerald gathered his thoughts. You did right, Brent. The way you handled it. You showed more grace than most would. I just wanted clean edges, Gerald. No jagged breaks. After we hung up, I stood in my front room, taking in the space I'd fought to keep. The maple shone with fresh finish. Scout dozed in a patch of sunlight. Outside, spring birds called to each other, unconcerned with human dramas. You know what I learned through all this? Justice doesn't need to shout. It works best when it cuts clean and quiet, letting truth do the heavy lifting. If you've been betrayed, and I know some of you have, remember this. You don't win by burning everything down. You win by walking away with what matters, head high, while they're left holding nothing but their own choices. I ran my hand one more time along that gleaming banister, feeling its strength. Scout lifted his head and thumped his tail, ready for our evening walk. The lock clicked behind us, solid and sure. In the end, that's all I needed. This rebuilt home, this earned silence, this peace that came from standing firm when the storm hit. The maple banister would be dry by morning, telling its story of restoration to anyone who cared to listen. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.